Okay. How's everybody doing today? We're going to be doing some more mapping. I'm on one of the last farms that I have yet to do here, where I'm going to be combining odd strips with all my even strips. This is what I'm going to be doing here now. You can see on this on my iPad here, we have each one of these individual strips with a separate field number. There's wheat here, I'm going to have corn, wheat, corn, so on and so forth. This is where the old cow barn sits up in front of me here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a separate boundary for, well, I'm going to start out with the even fields. The little part that I'm in right now, this field here is a sod lot that we're going to plow up, put into corn. That's right here. There's a driveway that comes over into this other one. So what I'm going to do is, I don't have a map for this part of the field that I'm sitting in. So I'm going to map around this. I'm going to cross the driveway. I'm going to come out around this field, follow this boundary. I'm going to drop in on this strip, come up through here, and do the total circumference of all of these strips here. I'm going to call that the even strips, because this first one here starts out with wheat, so that's the odd strip. And then I'll have all these as one field. All the evens will be one field, and then the odds will all be one field as well. And I'm going to show you how I do that with my 2600 or 2630 display here. And the reason why we're doing that is because of making things a little easier, spreading fertilizer, chopping and whatever. We have a tendency to jump around, especially chopping. Come into this lot here, and instead of finishing it, I'll jump up in a strip just to make things flow a little easier. Instead of making this hard corner or whatever, I'll jump up and grab a strip, come back down through the strip, jump into here and zigzag back and forth, depending on, because we're on a little bit of a side hill here, depending on how I have the trucks filled and, you know, where my empty trucks are at, and just so we're not tipping anything over. And the trouble with having each field labeled individually here, in order to keep track of the harvest data and whatnot, you have to stop every time you exit one field and enter another one, and choose through your field list to grab the appropriate field you're in. And we're also doing, it would make it easier to be able to spread fertilizer as well. If every other one of these strips was in its own field, then you could just pick, you know, what you're spreading fertilizer on, whether you're spreading it on hay ground or corn ground or whatever. You can just set it once and go. So what I'm going to do here on the 2630 display is I'm going to name what I'm doing, and I'm just going to call it C even strips. So I've entered my field name / number. I'm doing an exterior boundary, and I'm recording off my right hand side, and I'm going to be recording from where the receiver is. So I'm going to go ahead and start recording driving. I'm going to drive around the boundary of the field here. So I'll hit record, and I'll just simply start driving, running my right side dual on the edge of the field here. Okay, so I've made my way around. To this bottom strip, which I've got wheat planted below me, and I'm in the old hayfield that we're going to be planting corn in. So what I'm going to do here now, I paused my boundary recording so that I could get turned around, so I wouldn't have zigzag tracks all over the place in this corner. I wanted a 90-degree corner. So I'm going to resume the boundary recording, and I'm still recording off my right hand side. Now what I want to do is I want to record my guidance track, which I'm going to be using AB curves because nothing's straight here, everything's on a slight curve. So I'm going to name my guidance track on this bottom of this lower strip. So I'm going to name it West Side Strip 1, because it's my first strip. Then that way, when I go into my guidance track list, I'll be able to identify that easier. Hit accept. Now I'll start recording. I'm going to record till I get to the end of this strip. Okay, so I'm getting to the end of my strip here. So I'm just going to end recording of that guidance track and accept that. Now I'm recording off the receiver. The recording point is the receiver of the tractor, and then of course I want a perfect corner here, so I'm going to pause that so I can get turned around, just like drawing lines on a piece of paper, drawing them straight. I'm running my outside dual on the edge of the field, and then I backed up and put my receiver right on the edge of the seed, or the wheat field here, and the sod lot where we're going to plant corn. So now I'll just resume the boundary recording, and I will proceed on with recording my exterior boundary. So kind of the same thing as I did on that bottom strip. I'm going to be recording my guidance track on this upper strip. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to name my guidance track East Side, because I'm on the east side of the farm. East side, and I'm on strip 5. Cancel. I didn't get that typed in right. East Side Strip 5. Accept. So I'm gonna record that until I get to the end, and then I'll continue recording each of my guidance tracks as I proceed around the edge of this field. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but that's what I'm doing here. Okay, so I've come around this whole piece. I've come full circle around it. So I'm just going to stop recording, accept that. Now I have my exterior boundary established around everything, including the strips here. That's what the shape file is going to look like there. It's a little goofy, but I think it's going to work for what we want to do. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to record an interior boundary around the fields that we have wheat planted on. So you have to name each individual interior boundary. So I'm just going to call it strip 1 because it'll be the first wheat strip that's in this shape file here. Now you can kind of see that shape, how it's kind of lining up here on the screen here. It's kind of goofy. The reason why there's a cutout here is this is an open ditch, and that's my driveway to get across. Originally we had several individual fields here, and now we're going to get away from having to keep changing our display all the time and keep each crop in its own field. So we have this farm strip because it's on a pretty good side hill, and we rotate between alfalfa and corn. And after we took the corn off this past fall, we ended up putting wheat in on the corn stubble. So that's why there's wheat there, and then I'll seed that this summer, and that's how we'll get out through our rotation here. So I'll travel across to my first wheat strip that I need to make an interior boundary on. This farm here, in one of my previous videos, the silo video, that 24 by 85 silo, that was made from 2 silos, a 20 by 60 and a 24 by 60, and both of those silos originated on this farm. We bought this farm some years back, and we filled the silos up here. We had, that's a 16 by 60 there, that's a Lancaster silo. The blocks are too thin to be able to take that one down. That one's not worth tearing down, but the 2 silos that were here were ribstone silos. And the year we bought this farm, they had a freestall coming off the back side of the barn coming this way. You can barely see the foundation to it there. The first year we owned the farm, we didn't have animals in it and didn't intend on having animals in it. The snow come off the roof of that older part of the barn, come down on the freestall, and it caused the freestall to fall down. So we tore what was left of the freestall out of there, and that's what it's at. So there's part of the foundation of the 20 by 60, and the 24 by 60 was right there. Okay, so I've pulled up next to the first wheat strip that's in the boundary of these even fields. It's actually the second wheat strip, but it's the first wheat strip in this exterior boundary of the even fields here. I already recorded my guidance track on the east side of this first strip. This is where the old bunk was. The guy had a drive over pile on that cement pad here on this side of the barn. So now I'm going to set up my interior boundary. I already started recording my AB guidance track, and where that blue line is, that's the guidance track. So I'm going to change pages. I've picked out interior boundary type. I'm recording off my receiver on the left side, so I'll just hit record. Now I'll drive around the outside of this first wheat strip, and it's gonna record it in yellow. your exterior boundaries are in pink and purple, and interiors in yellow. So I'll proceed on here, and then I'll hit stop record when I get around the outside. Okay, so now I'm coming to the end of my guidance track and my interior boundary. So I'm going to come over here. I can drive forward a little farther, driven right to the edge. So I'm going to pause recording of that boundary, and I'm going to switch the recording source to the right hand side of the tractor because I'm going to be turning left here, and I don't want the interior boundary on my left hand side because it'll actually box out the edge of the field here. I got to put the recording source back on my right side. So I've paused that. I got to change pages into the guidance track. I need to stop recording my guidance track. So I'm going to back up, get squared around here. It's April 8th. It's gotten a little bit of snow here this morning already, and it's enabled me to be able to drive in my exact track. I can actually see where I drove. So now I'm going to resume my interior boundary recording. My receiver is sitting right on the edge of this field, and I had to change sides on where the tractor's going to record from. These blue lines are my guidance tracks. So I'm going to resume recording of the interior boundary, and that's recording now off the right hand side of the tractor, and then when I get up to the edge here, I'll have to switch it back to the left hand side because I don't want to be driving where I have wheat planted. I want to drive where the old sod lot is, the hay. So that's where we've come up to the edge here. I'll hit pause. I'm going to change the recording source. I'm going to move that back over to the left hand side of the tractor. I'll get lined up here. I'll start recording again, and then I'm going to also record my AB curve for the west side of my second, I'm going to call it my second strip because it's the second field in the even boundaries here. So I'm just going to type that in and get that recording. Okay, now I've come to the end of my interior boundary. Stop recording, accept that the fact that I stopped, I like the looks of it. I'll get rid of these guidance tracks. I'll show you what that'll look like. Come on. So there's no guidance tracks. So what that'll look like is a yellow box inside of our exterior boundary, the pink part. I don't really like driving on this wheat, but I'm only driving on the edge, and the ground was froze this morning. We're starting to pick up a little bit of mud. I don't think it'll hurt the wheat too much here. If I get turned around here, so there's the now we can see the what that interior boundary looks like. Now I'm going to continue on. I'm going to do the rest of the field that way. As I'm recording my boundary, I'm going to be doing my guidance tracks on each side. And then what that's going to do is when I'm planting the crop, it will plant that crop right on the edge of every boundary and make it a little more uniformly, a little more perfect looking. So I'm going to continue on until I get all these strips done on the interior boundaries, done on all these strips Okay, so here's where some of these things get kind of tricky here. I'm in the wheat strip. I don't want to continue driving in the wheat strip. I want to move over to the hay strip here. So I'm recording my interior boundary. However, I had to drive in the wheat strip because of there's like a ditch tile there on that bank, and I wouldn't have had an accurate interior boundary made had I driven up on top of the bank there. So I've driven this short distance on the edge of the wheat field here, drawing my interior boundary. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move down to this hay field here. I have paused recording for my interior boundary. Then I'm going to switch it over to recording on the left hand side. And I'm just simply going to move over and start recording from my left hand side. So I'm going to move over into this hay field, and then I'll press record, and it'll shift that interior boundary to my other side, or to recording from my other side. So I've moved exactly just parallel to where I was, and now it's going to be coming off my left hand side, and I'm just going to hit resume, and we're going to continue recording, but off the other side of the tractor. So that way everything looks a little neater, and you're able to have that come out a lot nicer that way without having to drive in the wheat field here. So I'm going to continue on here, and so that I don't have a really long video, I'm going to try to shorten this up as much as I can here. So okay, on these even fields, I just finished my last interior boundary. So what I have to do now is do the odd ones. So the yellow area is the interior boundaries of the wheat strips, and then what's the opposite part is the sod piece where I'm going to plant corn. Now, I don't want to have this video go on too long, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exterior boundary of the odd strips, and then do the same thing. I will be doing a interior boundary on the strips that I'm going to be putting corn on, the hay strips. And I'll have some pictures of what these will all look like when they're together. I just don't want this video to go on here forever. I do have one other farm that that's got a bunch of strips on it. I haven't yet made up my mind whether or not I want to do that one. The strips are a little larger, and there's not as many of them. I think there's only 6 of them. There's 10 here. The one I did before this, there was 12. It takes quite a little while to do this, and quite honest with you, I'm quite sick of doing it already. So it'll take me another hour to get the rest of these fields done here, and earlier this morning it took me almost 2 hours to do the strips on the other farm that I did. Of course, there's other ways of doing this. You could record this right while you're planting, and that's how I would normally do this. However, I wouldn't be able to do the recording of the strips that I have weed on. I would have to drive that anyway, so instead of driving that while I'm planting with a planter tied to me, I can do it now with just the tractor here. And it does go a little faster. Everything would be a little more uniform like. Prior to this, we had all of our strips mapped as individual fields, and we have gone to applying fertilizer with a variable rate, and there's prescriptions for each field that we have. So as far as applying fertilizer, it's going to be easier to apply fertilizer, and it'll also be easier to do the harvest, whether we're harvesting corn, hay, or chopping corn. With the way the yield data gets recorded, anyways, it's all, you can look on a map and kind of look at what how your yield panned out anyways, and I just don't feel that it's necessary anymore to have all these strips tied up into individual fields if there's only 2 different crops on them anyway. So I'm identifying my next field boundary that I'm going to do, and I'm going to get out of my way here. So, okay, I'm coming to the end of my last interior boundary on my odd strips here. So I've made a guidance track. I'm going to stop that now because I'm on my last pass, and then I'm going to turn off the recording for this interior boundary. I'm going to accept that. I'll show you what this looks like. It's starting to generate my guidance lines from coming down through the field there. I had switched recording points from one side of the tractor to the other here, and it didn't quite line up in that corner there. I have to try to fix that on the computer or something, but let's go into here so I can get rid of. So on my tractor park here, these are my this is the guidance list for my AB curves, and this is how many guidance lines I had made. I had labeled them each. I give each one of them a name there, and I'll be able to pick them out depending on which strip I'm on when I go to plant the corn, or when we go to seed the wheat strips down here. So I'm just gonna pick nothing for a guidance strip so I can show what this map looks like of this these odd strips here. I'm gonna minimize that so it'll show up. So that's kind of what it looks like there. I don't know if it's actually gonna show up on the camera there, but the yellow strips here are the fields that are the strips that are gonna have corn on them, and then everything in between is where the wheat's planted. So this was the odd strips, and then this is the even strips. Kind of see how that all lines up there. So, well, like I said, you can do this while you're planting the field, and we've done that before, done it on everything else. But one advantage of doing this mapping this way opposed to doing it while you're planting, my interior boundaries and my guidance tracks and my other mapping, all the lines are going to end up right on top of each other. There's not going to be any of this stuff going on as far as trying to plant next to the previous crop or the crop that you're planting next to. So that's one advantage to it. The other advantage of doing it this way, it'll speed up the planting process a little bit, and it'll also enable us to be able to apply fertilizer using these maps, because we're not going to do the mapping with the fertilizer tractor, because your guidance track on the fertilizer tractor, you would be guessing your gap from the edge of the field, because the spread pattern on our spreader is 60 feet. So you'd be trying to guess your exterior boundary by trying to drive 30 feet away from the edge of the field, and it wouldn't be all that accurate. The most accurate way to do it is to do it while you're planting, or do it this way and use the edge of either your planting or your tillage piece of equipment, whatever piece of equipment you're running alongside the edge of that field. That's the most accurate way to map this stuff, so that you're actually using the whole field and getting right up to the edge of the field. This one other field I should map, because I don't have a boundary for this little field here on this other side of the road. So I'm just gonna map this quick. It'll take me a second. Name it here. Okay, while that's loading in that page, I'm just gonna pour it around the outside here. Doing the exterior boundary, and I'm going to put a guidance track on the outside of each side of the field here as well, so that I have that for when we plant this. If we plant it, I don't know. This is kind of a tiny little field here. I'm across the road from the barn here, and it all lays on a pretty good side hill. It's a real fiasco to chop. There's a telephone line that's on the north end of the field here that we usually get caught up underneath when we go to chop it. Have to swing things around this way and that way, and whatever to get under that. So I'm going to travel up the side of the road here. It's going to be nice to be done with these strips here. That's time consuming, but kind of looking forward to seeing how this all works. Okay, and the boundary, accept it. Yeah, this field's 0.89 acres. So that'll take care of that one. Better change fields, and it's gonna. Alright, so we're gonna head on home here.